We also have a very particular set of skills. Skills that we've acquired over the years of our careers. Skills that make us a nightmare for people like you. If you let our friend go now, that'll be the end of it. We will not pursue you. But if you don't, we will look for you. We will find you. And we will kill you.
Written, directed and produced by Jordan Gertner, we are talking SHEROES, and this one stars Isabelle Fuhrman, who you may know from the movie Orphan, I think primarily, and obviously Orphan 2. You've also got Wallis Day, who was recently in the CW Batwoman TV series, and this logline I think perfectly sums up this movie. This is essentially Charlie's Angels meets The Hangover Part 2. Does that sound like a movie you'd want to watch? If so, then carry on watching this film. Now, this is a kind of medium budget movie. From what I can see, the budget was around $20 million. So it's not a super low budget movie, but obviously it's not a kind of a blockbuster either. So it focuses on 4 kind of female socialite friends, rich girls who decide they're going to have a vacay out in kind of Thailand. So they get this private jet and they go out there, and these 4 girls, one's kind of like a skater girl, one's like an actress, things like this. They're all kind of like high society types. And they end up in this kind of island off the coast of Thailand, and one of their kind of suitcases gets kind of mixed up, and they end up with a case full of cocaine. And the local cartel obviously want their kind of cocaine back and kidnap one of these kind of girls and hold her hostage in return for obviously the bag of cocaine. And they've snorted a part of it, but there you go. But our 3 remaining girls decide they're going to rescue their friend and take down this cartel if they can in the meantime. What will happen? You will have to watch the movie and find out. So, let's talk about it. Before we get into what I think does not work and what works, I want to address the kind of the 2023-ness of this movie. And what do I mean by that? I can't help but feel that this movie is ironically made to deliberately antagonise the sort of people who kind of complain about the MCU and things like that. It almost seems like the antithesis of the type of movies that those kind of channels and people will kind of complain about, because it is a total girl boss movie, written and directed by a guy, but there you go, and has everything that I feel if you don't like the kind of the MCU, it has everything, like almost deliberately so, that would kind of make those type of people kind of irate. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of kind of the Marvel in its kind of recent incarnation, but it seemed like an odd thing to do, because this movie is relatively kind of like expensive in regards to an independent feature, and it's not like it's a parody. I mean, it's not even an action comedy. I mean, it's sort of tongue-in-cheek. Clearly, it's not going very realistic take on these kind of this story, but it's not a comedy by any means. It is meant to be just a kind of like a high octane kind of hyper reality action film. But I can't help but think this is kind of like just a sort of a sticking its nose up at those type of audience members, shall we say. So you'd have to judge whether that's going to be something that would annoy you or whether it doesn't. We'll talk about, I'm going to kind of separate that from my thoughts about what I think works and doesn't work for the movie, but I do feel it has to be addressed, because it's a total sort of like girl power, girl boss movie, but from a creative mind of a guy. That's the best way to describe it. So I'm not quite sure who this movie is made for, because I almost think people on the other side of the aisle as well may think it's a little bit sort of not exactly sticking to the rules of feminism at the same time. let's talk about it. What do I think that works? Okay. So because this movie has a slightly bigger budget than your kind of, a lot of these kind of straight to kind of VOD, straight to kind of DVD action films, it does have a reasonable production value. There's lots of kind of on location kind of shooting. You know, you get kind of like chase scenes through the kind of the streets of this kind of like, well, Thailand or wherever it was shot, but it's meant to be this kind of this Thailand kind of island. You know, lots of kind of stunts in exploding vehicles and kind of lots of kind of extras with its kind of cartel and things like that. So it has some production value in it, and obviously these four girls are there. They're kind of made to be like super kind of like high society socialites, and they have lots of kind of luxury cars and private jets and everything like that. And they, you know, it's very much kind of showing you, you know, an expensive kind of like Instagram like famous, or what the people perceive as these kind of Instagram kind of style lifestyles that people aspire to. But it has that kind of high production value, or relatively high, you know, for a indie movie. So yeah, I mean, it does look kind of quite polished. There are quite a lot of kind of action kind of sequences here, and you know, they're not badly filmed, I will say. I'll give credit where credit is due. There are some sequences here, but it's nothing outstanding. It's nothing you haven't seen before. We're not talking like, you know, Extraction or kind of John Wick kind of style action here, but it's it's competently kind of put together in regards to its technical abilities. Lots of reasonable stunts, lots of explosions, kind of like, you know, it's never really slows down once we kind of get going. It's very much like a fast-paced kind of silly, very much like a kind of a Charlie's Angels movie in some ways. So that's the thing, if you enjoy the Charlie's Angels movies, I think you'd probably enjoy this. It's very kind of similar, like very similar, with the difference being that these girls are not trained like agents or spies. They're just kind of girls who seem to be great at everything. We'll come on to that. We'll come on to that. But yeah, so but if you like Charlie's Angels, you know, it's going to appeal to you. And yes, they're a very attractive cast, and it's nice to see Isabel Fuhrman kind of glamming it up compared to, you know, probably the role she's most known for. But yeah, all the girls here are of course super attractive, and there's like a hunky kind of pilot that one of them kind of gets interested in, things like that. So it's lots of kind of you know, glamour on screen. Now, the decision here as well, and I think it's a double-edged sword, and we'll come on to why I think it doesn't work, is to have these girls be very much party girls. They're interested in like drinking. They want to do a lot of drugs. They want to kind of sleep around with a lot of men. And again, I'm thinking, is this writer kind of thinking, oh, well, sort of trying to make the point, if this were guys, no one would bat an eyelid, but because it's girls, it's going to kind of seem a little bit kind of jarring to some people. And I can't help but feel that the creative idea was to try and have this, you know, these kind of characters be quite unlikable, if I'm being honest, but very much like, you know, they are hard drinking, partying, loads of drugs, etc., and just kind of want to party. And again, I'll refer to that kind of that Instagram kind of like lifestyle that I think a lot of young girls aspire to, and young women kind of want to kind of achieve. And it almost seems like, hey, look, check out this, where these Instagram style girls go on this sort of adventure. Again, I'm not quite sure who this movie's made for. I really am not. But yeah, it is on display. But it looks slick and it looks kind of polished. The movie is quite fast paced. And, you know, I've got to be honest with you, for an action movie, if you can kind of get over the sort of setup, you know, it's a fun movie in some ways. And it's kind of like, you know, it's so over the top in aspects. I kind of like, it turned into schlocky. So the premise is very silly, and we're going to talk about it, but it kind of goes beyond the kind of the joke and ends up in schlocky territory. it kind of feels like, you know, one of the kind of like the Julie Strain sort of movies that what's his name, Sedaris would make in the kind of like the 80s and the 90s and things like that. Those kind of like Malibu Express kind of style films. So, you know, kind of exploitative in some ways. But let me just transition to what does not work. I mean, I've kind of touched upon it. These girls are not particularly relatable. I mean, these are like, they're sort of like, as I say, 4 rich girls, one of which is kind of sidelined through the movie. So it really is kind of 3. Because she's only in the beginning, but in you know the other one, the 4th one. But you know they're kind of like a very self-centered, entitled kind of characters that seem to be great at everything. It's kind of like, you know, I mean, like I said, this is where the difference between Charlie's Angels and this is that these girls aren't trained spies or agents. They're just 3 girls. And one of them's father is an actor. They kind of hint that the father might be Liam Neeson, but whatever. And because the father does action films, she knows everything about kind of guns and combat and stuff, which she teaches the other 2. But they're great at it. I mean, they pick up like, I mean, one of them, there's this one girl with the kind of like the purple hair, and she's deemed to be like, because she's sporty, oh, she's going to be the one that's going to be the close combat. And we have a scene where she actually fights a champion, like bare knuckle fighter, and she does this because she's a bit sporty and lives this healthy lifestyle, even though we see her do like cocaine and drink and smoke and stuff, and manages to beat this kind of like seasoned champion bare knuckle boxer. I mean, that's where it is. So yeah, it's certainly a movie which is, you know, playing fast and loose with any type of kind of realism. And then we have our characters literally kill dozens of people, and then it's like never addressed how it affects anyone. They just kill people. Okay, they might be drug dealers, but nevertheless, you know, these 3 women have basically killed a whole bunch of people, and it's totally cool. So yeah, obviously it's not realistic. Obviously it's very, very silly. And I feel, you know, there's not like an in-movie reason why these kind of girls are be able to like this, outside of my father is an action movie star, and therefore he's like, his acting on guns has made me this great fighter. It's very silly. I think this movie would have been better had it lent into the kind of like the more comedic aspect, because it's not a comedy. There's a couple of kind of like homages to other movies, Taken, Die Hard, things like this, but it's not really ever trying to be particularly kind of funny. And I think it would have been a more original and maybe a more fun film if these women were kind of deluded that they've seen these kind of films where glamorous, untrained people go and fight all these kind of like bad guys, and you know, they just think it's going to be a breeze, and maybe it's kind of dumb luck that they managed to kind of get so far. That would have been a more interesting film, but instead it treats it like seriously, that these people are actually capable of this, taking on this this drug cartel. When we actually have another character who's a DEA agent, goes, well, we've been trying to take it down for years, and these women have taken it down in like a matter of a couple of days, and things like this. So yeah, it's kind of silly. What else? So the acting is a mixed bag. Let me just say that. There are some quite poor performances, but I think others do okay, and it's okay for a kind of a silly sort of B movie. There is a little bit of kind of wonky kind of CGI. There's not that much of it, but when we do see it, it is a little bit kind of wonky. But as I've kind of alluded to, I think the problem is here is the characters are so unrelatable that it's really kind of hard to buy into them. And you might say, well, John Wick might be unrelatable. You know, people aren't a kind of an assassin. But the movie, for example, John Wick, it made you care because he had his dog and all that. Everyone can relate to that. But you also believed him in that role. or Extraction with Chris Hemsworth, but we know he's a special forces guy, so you can kind of go in with a certain level. Here, it doesn't have that, so you really feel like there's these girls are very unrelatable, and the movie does work to try and make you almost dislike them by having them kind of like be so entitled and kind of so rich and so know-it-all that you don't kind of like. I mean, I think they kind of, you sort of warm to them a little bit as the kind of the film goes on, but they never really seem to struggle. You know, they seem to pretty much win every time. And there's never much drama in it. There's never much kind of like, oh, they're going to kind of be in danger or one of them's going to get hurt or killed. It never really feels like that. So it's a kind of candy floss action movie. It's kind of, like I said, on a spectacle level, it's kind of fun. It's kind of like a throwaway, somewhat kind of well-produced movie that is, visually speaking, I would say, certainly interesting. It's an attractive cast. I think it's kind of well put together on a kind of a technical side. And I didn't think necessarily our main characters did necessarily a bad job. I mean, there are some supporting characters I don't think do particularly well. But they're written not to be particularly kind of relatable. So it's kind of like a middling throwaway action film in some ways. And like I've said, some people won't like this purely because it's such a kind of like girl boss movie. But I'm not even sure if people who are into that would like it, because I don't know. It feels like it's trying to be a girl boss movie for the lens of a man. It's the best way. But I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. It's a watchable kind of action film on its own merits. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.